Brian, I got some Will McClay quotes for you here on the coaching process. Is this new? Will said, I've been part of the whole process. They allowed me to be part of it, and so to visit with the different candidates and whatnot and hearing what people brought to the table was very important to be a part of.
I think that's Will McClay for a number of years has turned down potential general manager interviews, and it just appears that even more and more we're seeing him being now with the Cowboys being more involved in things.
Included in GM type stuff.
Exactly.
I just hope it's to prepare him to take on a bigger role within
the Cowboys.
Yeah.
I think that should be your hope. Yeah.
I mean, if you could just take away Jerry and Steven's interactions on the football side and replace it with Will McClay as the official GM, I think this team would take a significant leap in their probabilities of winning the Super Bowl.
I think
the dream.
Yeah, I think the fan. There's some of the fan base that's not too totally happy with Will and some of the things, but I think the majority of the people do like what Will's done.
He's had some stinkers in the draft. Everybody has, though.
Yep, absolutely.
The Eagles are coming off one of their greatest drafts ever, but they had taken some swings and misses.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And that's why they kind of stumbled 2-3 years ago. On Schotty, McClay says he's been observing him since the 2022 season when Brian first started working with the Cowboys. Says he liked how he grinded and was a big part of the advanced process and helping the coaches get ready. We spent a lot of time talking. He spent a lot of time talking to the pro staff. You get a great feeling for his understanding of personnel and how personnel is used. When he looks at this draft class, Will McClay, he sees an opportunity for the Cowboys to build strong depth. Would you agree with that overall assessment? He says there's some good players. There's middle depth. We'll begin to see what the top first-round talent is, how deep that goes, but there's a lot of good players. It's just finding the right value for them to add to your roster.
Kind of feel like I got the third round down. Feel like I got some guys in the fourth. I got to get through the fifth to kind of figure out some of these things. But if I can, I'm 100 players into this thing. And so far, like I said, I think at the top I have more questions about the potential of the top 20 players. Go on past that, it kind of clears up for me a little bit, but I need to figure out the fifth round here to kind of have a real understanding because I think in the third and the fourth he's right, but I need to see the fifth to make sure that he's on base with that.
I mean, when you say you're picking 12th and 44th, though, I need impact. I need potential
There's
stars.
No question.
Right. So there were two things that came to mind as you said that those were his thoughts. One, maybe he doesn't think that this draft class is really going to necessarily give you day one starters, which could be a fair assessment. Maybe he is looking at, okay, we're kind of going to get some depth pieces, and if they emerge as like starting players, then great. Otherwise, the second thought was, I don't know what roster, and look, Will's fantastic, but I mean, this team's not looking for depth. This team's looking for starters. Osa Digizua, you needed a starting defensive tackle, right? Unless you're bringing him back. DeMarcus Lawrence, free agent at left defensive end. Chauncey Golston, free agent at left defensive end. Are you sliding Marshawn Nealon in there and thinking he's your guy? Okay. You need a new starting linebacker. Kendricks, free agent. Overshown, out for the year. Diggs, out for the year most likely, right? You need another corner opposite him. Jordan Lewis is a free agent. I mean, you just go down the depth chart. This team's not looking for depth. This team is looking to plug holes in their starting lineup right now. This roster is not as good as they seem to think it is.
Is he preparing us for the lack of punch that the 12th overall pick is going to have?
I think he's preparing you that he's about to lose a lot of his guys that Zach was talking about, Osa, Golston, Lewis, those guys. I think he's preparing you that he knows he's going to have to replace a lot of those guys. So I don't think he's preparing you for the 12th pick. I think he's preparing you for he's going to have to go and address all the guys he's about to lose. I think that's his biggest issue right now.
Okay, and he followed that statement up by pointing out we played 10 corners this year, the largest number I've ever played because of injuries. Yeah. And you look at the defensive line, and you can never cover yourself up all the way. How do you like your chances at 12 for corner and defensive line?
Well, Siobhan Ravel would be probably my number one option there, but he's coming off an ACL, which might be right up the Cowboys' alley, judging by how they draft previously. I do like Jahdae Barron. I don't care what scouts say across the league at 12 maybe being too high. I'm confident in the player. I think he's fine. If you want a corner, take Jahdae Barron at 12. Maybe in a perfect world, somebody slides that another team wants, and I can drop back, pick up an extra pick, and take him a couple picks later. But I do think there's two corners there that I'd be interested in having a conversation about at 12.
Okay, so that's some of the highlights. Will McClay. Did you have something to add to that, Brian? Or
yeah, if I could follow up, he mentions Reville from East Carolina, Morrison from Notre Dame. Two of my 4 first-round corners are coming off some type of injury, whether it's a knee or a hip.
Okay.
But, man, you watch their play, the ability they have. If you get clean bills on both those guys, they're outstanding players to take.
So we got the news today that Eberflus is official. He's going to be the Cowboys' new defensive coordinator. He was linebackers coach here from 2011 through 2017, so he knows the organization well. When you were talking with John Oning yesterday, Brian, about Eberflus running a Rod Marinelli type defense, what relevance did that have for you? What were you thinking about as he was answering that?
Well, I was thinking about because when Matt first came here, he was under the Rob Ryan administration, so he was odd front, 3-down lineman, linebackers kind of a thing. So he morphed from a guy, and he was one of the guys that was a holdover. Him, Jerome Henderson, guys like that, they were holdovers. So it was like he went from like, okay, well, I know this, and now I have to learn this. The one thing I remember Rod Marinelli talking about him was how smart he was, and there was things that, and Rod realized that having Flus on staff and letting him call defenses was really a good thing. Him, Chris Richard, he was like, Rod kind of felt like that maybe the game, he was into it, but he wasn't into it like these younger coordinators were. And Flus got a lot of experience that way. So, yeah, with Rod Marinelli, it's about the 3 technique. We remember how they gave Tyron Crawford a ton of money because, they thought Marinelli thought that he was going to be a perfect 3 technique for him, and said he was just really, really too banged up to be, in his career the way it was. So, yeah, I was just, you got to kind of pay attention to those trends of, okay, where you've played, whether it's Indianapolis or with the Bears, what did the personnel look like, and then take that and then now marry that to what you think he's going to do with the Cowboys. I think he's got some players that he can marry that scheme to. I'll be interested to see what he does with Micah Parsons. That's my
I just remember with Rod Marinelli not hitting on pass rushers, and then you're weak against the run as well.
Yeah.
And I really think that set them up to be bad against the run for the majority of the last 15 years.
Rod Marinelli, all of it was really about playing the run on the way to rushing the passer.
Yeah.
And I think with Flus, I don't think he's somewhere in between, because I don't think he takes the chances of Rob Ryan, where Rob Ryan will have 10 guys on the field and go 0 blitz and then get beat. Rod was a little bit more like, okay, we're going to rush the passer. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to get you in the 3rd down. Eric and I were talking again this morning on Love of the Star, and Eric brought it up about some of Flus's defenses at Chicago on 3rd down. They were giving up some plays and stuff like that. And that's bad for a guy that tries to keep everything in front of him.
I do think it's fair to consider, like, going back to when he got hired as the defensive coordinator of the Colts for the last half decade before Eberflus were running the 3-4, and he made it a point to switch them to a 4-3.
Sure, right.
So I do think he leans the Marinelli way probably a touch more than the Ryan.
Well, the two things that really stood out, just real quick, that are positives with him, and Blogging the Boys put this out. They were top 10 in takeaways all 4 seasons as a defense coordinator with the Colts, so that's exciting. And then 3 out of the 4 seasons, they finished in the top 10 in terms of points allowed. So they didn't allow a ton of points, and part of that was a 23-0 shutout of the Cowboys back in 2019, the last time I think they've ever been shut out. So he doesn't allow a lot of points. They're stingy, and then the takeaways, maybe they come back, which you missed with Dan Quinn leaving.
So in your division, those are good insights. In your division, you have a team that has renaissanced the power running game, right? For me, like, getting up the field, that's going to get you murdered against Philadelphia and Saquon Barkley for the foreseeable future, right? Like,
they're going to need to figure out about playing. Like, I was asking people about Mason Graham from Michigan, if you were to draft him. And the scout told me, hey, think of him as like a power 3, a 3 technique that has some power. And maybe that's the kind of the route that Flus is going to want to go with a little bit. Get a guy like Mozzie Smith, get a little bit bigger guy. Not so much with Marinelli. Marinelli was like the Warren Sapp up the field, kind of, those types of players. but a little bit lighter across the front. The reason Marinelli got away with it in Tampa is he had guys like Derek Brooks and others that were playing linebackers that were pretty badass as far as getting downhill, filling gaps and stuff like that. I mean, if Flus is going to have to, this linebacking room doesn't look really great right now. Health and then some of the inexperience it has. It's going to have to go out and maybe grab a guy or two, but they're going to have to draft it as well.
That's a look at your top Cowboys headlines. Couple of others. I find it humorous sometimes what comes up with high hit rate if you just put in Dallas Cowboys into Google. Here's one of the headlines. TWSN's Marissa Myers, just a made-up story. Cowboys' $24 million superstar predicted to seek trade after new head coach hire, talking about Micah Parsons. She's just like, yeah, I think if they keep losing, he's going to get frustrated and ask for a trade. That's just it made up out of nowhere, but I saw it on Cowboys Twitter. And then I did like this one from A to Z Sports. Stephen Jones must apologize to Cowboys fans for unacceptable comment. And I would appreciate that. I don't think that's coming anytime soon from Stephen Jones. I think one of the most terrifying things we have seen in recent memory is, his statement yesterday about the drought that they're supposedly in and his absolute denial of their current state of just needing to get better.